Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Glad to be with you.
So there was a party today and you didn't get invited, or at least that's the word on the street. President Trump had Republican senators at the White House for a lunch at the Rose Garden. You were not there. What happened?
Well, I have this position. The president considers it to be bizarre and weird, but I believe that we should have less debt and that we should balance our budget. And I have, I guess, what he considers to be a weird proposal that we should have less debt next year, that we should spend less money next year than we spent last year. And so we're kind of at odds on that. But I take it as a badge of courage, really. I mean, there has to be someone left. What if there's no one left who actually believes in balanced budgets? To me, I'm worried about the demise of a conservative voice within the Republican Party if we all become rubber stamps. So I'm kind of happy sometimes to be the skunk at the party. I'm also happy.
Or the skunk that wasn't invited to the party. Yeah. I mean, would you have liked to be the skunk actually in the room, though, to use your words there, to be there and to have those conversations with your colleagues?
I still am in the room. I can't control invitations to the White House. But, when we released on Twitter that we weren't invited, 500,000 people immediately saw that. So we have a bit of an audience and we are able to communicate. And like I say, look, I support President Trump. If I'm given the choice of President Trump versus Harris or versus Biden, without question, I choose President Trump over and over again. But that doesn't mean I'm going to sit back and just say, oh, I'm leaving all my beliefs on the doorstep. I'm no longer going to be for free trade. I'm no longer going to be for balanced budgets. I'm no longer going to be opposed to killing people without trials, without naming them, without evidence. No, I have to remain who I am. But I also think that it's important for a republic, for a constitutional republic, to have push back to see the legislative branch show ambition. Madison said that we would keep and rein in executive power by pitting the ambition of the legislature versus the ambition of the executive. But what if the Congress has no ambition? I'm in a Congress now where I am literally the only voice on the Republican side for reducing deficits, the only voice for free trade, and the only voice on the Republican side that you really shouldn't just be able to summarily execute people on the high seas.
So what's going on with some of your colleagues? I mean, you've served with some of these folks for a long time. Are they holding back their beliefs? Have their beliefs changed? What are you seeing among your peers there?
I'll give you an example. Many of us have believed that you shouldn't use emergency powers to run a country, that there are spending issues that have to go through Congress. There are tax issues that have to go through Congress. These were written by our founding fathers. We've always adhered to them. Under Biden, I can tell you there were 24 Republicans that were supportive of my efforts on emergencies, that emergencies should expire after 30 days, and that in order for an emergency to be affirmed, Congress would have to vote on it. Well, all of these tariffs are from emergencies on 150 countries. President Trump declared an emergency, and without Congress, he's now levied import taxes on 150 countries. There were many Republicans with me, but they've changed positions because there's a Republican president. They're no longer worried about emergencies that they were worried about with Biden. And likewise, when there was a Biden presidency, most of the Democrats didn't care about emergency powers. And now suddenly they do care about emergency powers now that there's a Republican president. And I think the true test of principle is whether or not you keep your principles no matter which party is in power.
Well, you're not shy, so I'm sure you have said some version of this to some of your colleagues. Like, what's their response to you on that?
I think one of the things about the inner workings of Congress is you rarely can persuade anybody to do something they're not inclined to do. If I were to recite what I just recited to you, which is basically a narrative of hypocrisy, I don't think that makes me any friends necessarily, and I don't think I'm going to persuade anybody. They have to be persuaded on their own. Here's a good example. There are probably 8 farm states. Maybe there are 10 farm states. That means there's 20 senators who have always believed in free trade, and they're all grumbling, and they're all like, China's not buying any of our, soybean this year. The tariff war with China has led to this, and they don't have the guts because it's their president. And frankly, they're afraid. They're afraid that he will do to them what he's trying to do to me. That's too bad, because it'd be a little easier on me if I weren't the only target, if there were other people willing to stand up and oppose bad policy.
All right. Let's talk about something that's been bubbling beneath the surface for a while now. Fear. Not just political fear, but the kind that paralyzes people who should be speaking truth to power. In this recent interview, Senator Rand Paul drops a truth bomb that I think a lot of people in Washington would rather ignore. He says, frankly, they're afraid, referring to his fellow Republicans' unwillingness to challenge Donald Trump. And you know what? He's not wrong. So in this clip, Rand Paul sits down and talks openly about what's going on inside the Republican Party. He points out that many GOP members are staying silent, not because they agree with Trump, but because they fear the consequences of going against him. He doesn't mince words. He talks about the intimidation, the political backlash, and even the social media mob effect that comes with stepping out of line. Paul basically says that Republicans have gotten to a point where loyalty to Trump is valued more than loyalty to principle, to truth, or even to the Constitution. That's a huge statement, especially coming from Rand Paul, who's not exactly a moderate. He's someone who's been very vocal about independence, about liberty, and about not bending to political pressure. Okay, let's pause right there, because what Rand Paul is describing isn't just a Republican problem. It's a power problem. When people in power stop questioning authority because they're afraid of losing their positions, that's when democracy starts to weaken. Think about that. If lawmakers are scared to speak their minds, not because they lack conviction, but because they fear political exile, what does that say about the strength of their convictions in the first place? And look, say what you will about Rand Paul. He's controversial, he's outspoken, he's independent. But this time, he's holding up a mirror to his own party. And that takes guts. He's not saying, I hate Trump. He's saying, why is everyone so afraid to tell the truth? That's a pretty loaded question, and it's one that goes beyond party lines. So here's what I want to ask you all. Is fear controlling American politics? If a senator, someone who's supposed to represent the people, is afraid to challenge one man, what does that mean for the rest of us? So let's open this up. Do you think Rand Paul is right? Is fear keeping Republicans from challenging Trump? Or is it just smart politics to stay aligned with the party's most powerful figure? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take.